Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. We're going to start today's Culture Think Tank. So welcome to the Culture Think Tank, where we discuss the trends and analytics of culture facing us today. Our goal is to help provide insights and best practices organizations and leaders can use to strengthen their cultures during today's new normal. I'm Will Lindstrom. Today on our weekly roundup, we have our panel of experts, and today we're going to focus on reviewing the analytic dashboards and help everybody understand how the dashboards are made up and how they can be used to help you stay in touch and stay connected to your organization. Joining us today is Rob Nielsen, CEO of All American Leadership out of Irvine, California. Cynthia Kuriazis, the author of Amazon bestseller, Get Organized, Get Focused, Get Moving, and CEO of Productivity Partners out of Kansas City. She is joining us today via the phone since we're having a little bit of technical issues and she won't be able to join us via video. And then finally, Delise Crimmins, CEO of Design Learning out of San Antonio, Texas, who will be giving us our show and tell of the dashboards today. At this point in time, I'll pass it off to Delise.
Great. Good morning, Will. Thank you so much. Each week we've been going through an understanding of what people are going through with their dispersed workforce. We've been talking to leaders, and our attendees have had the opportunity to fill out this pulse poll. So you guys have seen a dashboard, and what we want to do is take you through the Culture Think Tank website. And on the Culture Think Tank website is this poll, this global universal poll, which shows the answers that we've been going over with you. But additionally, we have had clients who want that information for their organization individually. So we're going to take you through the dashboard to show you, here's what this global result can tell all of us. And then specifically, if your organization wants to know, how is my organization doing right now during this time of transition? It's interesting, Will and Rob and Cynthia, we're right now, we're in the middle of, obviously, leaders learning how to lead in a remote workforce, employees learning how to work in an isolated workforce, and that the problems that has presented for both leaders and employees and organizations as well. But I don't anticipate that this is going to end at not the COVID crisis, but the issues that organizations are going to be facing once we transition back to bringing our employees back into the workforce. Having our finger on the pulse of how employees are feeling, I think, is a critical piece for us constantly, regardless of what change is happening. I mean, this obvious global pandemic has created a change we never anticipated, but we can see this pulse poll as something that organizations could use irrespective of a pandemic or a problem, but really just asking our employees, how do you feel? What are you thinking right now? And having this live dashboard to update it. So given that, I'd like for us to move over to the dashboard, have us take a look at it, see what you think. And we will have the opportunity, Will, to ask questions. Can you talk to that a little bit just as we go through what someone would need to do if they had a question?
Sure thing. So if you'd like to ask a question at any point in time in your little panel that's up there, you can open up the question or you can open up a chat. Either one will send us a notice. And you can just type in your question during then, and as we go through the event, as questions come up that are relevant, I will interrupt Delise and have her address those questions, or we'll save them to the end if they seem to be more appropriate to have as summary points.
Okay, thank you. That's great. So I've opened it up to what is the Culture Think Tank website, theculturethinktank.com. And this is, everyone can log in to this site. We're going to have live workshops, and there's an opportunity here for, if you want to become a member of the Culture Think Tank, that you can join some workshops where we're going to be bringing local leaders together, national leaders together to talk about what's trending right now in our remote workforce. And as this moves over into how do we transition back, it's just going to be an opportunity for leaders to come together and share information, share our learning. We'll have experts come in and talk to us about how they've done it well. We'll have our panel of culture experts. The people that we work with in this particular panel, we're working with experts and CEOs every day trying to figure out how to do this well. No one's ever done this before. So we'd like for you guys to join the Culture Think Tank if you would like to. And the Culture Think Tank dashboard is what really is going to give us some critical information about our organization. So If you are a member of the Culture Think Tank, I'll show you what you're going to get the opportunity to see. So you've got this dashboard opportunity right here. And as we open it up, it's going to take us to the global picture that everyone sees. So we just want to walk you through and help you understand what we're looking at when we're diagnosing what's happening within an organization and diagnosing really what's happening across our country. So this pie graph right here, we're calling this a connection index. And what we mean by that is it's designed to measure how connected employees feel to their organization and to their leadership. And this blue line right here says that 21.72% of the words that employees are using are connecting words. Words like, these employees are feeling hopeful, they're feeling okay, they're feeling good, they're feeling balanced, they're feeling optimistic, happy, grateful. The larger the square, the more times people said it, and down over to the smaller the square, the fewer times people said it. So when we see these large words like hopeful and okay and good and balanced, that's encouraging. If you look at this dial right here, my guess is, and I'm gonna throw this open to Rob and Cynthia for your comments on this. We don't know, but my guess is that these disconnecting words, which right now are 78%, and the connecting words are 21%. My guess is if we weren't in a COVID crisis, if it was business as usual, that those percentages would be flipped. What do you guys think?
I wish I could agree with that. But
Okay.
having done dozens of these now for different organizations, even going into the crisis, there has been an underlying level of frustration with organizations across the country, small organizations, large organizations, and what I've experienced over the last month has been that this crisis has just accentuated that what was already present. And what's really interesting, and I was really glad you started here, is I did an online program with a large organization of first responders, and that'll be as specific as I'm going to get. And this was an organization that frankly was in crisis long before the COVID crisis happened. And this particular organization was at ground zero for their region that blew up very, very early in the crisis. And it was apparent all the way back to 2019 that they had huge trust issues. And when they were asked, what were the predominant sentiments of the organization, it was probably more than 80% negative when you looked at the emotions of the organization.
Wow.
And fast forwarding, they did a whole bunch of interventions where they had some airing of grievances and lashing of boils of frustration around trust and communication and ownership. And what was fascinating was they had a breakthrough in January, and it was a very emotional time for them. Did not reconnect with them until last week, where we came together and we asked this question: what are the predominant emotions that you've experienced this week? And their results were very similar to what you show here: frustrated, in some cases angry, anxious, uncertain. But then when we sent them, and it was a big Zoom meeting, but when we sent them to breakout meetings and they came back out, and I was really nervous about how those breakout meetings of 4 or 5 people in a conversation were going to go. And they came back out, and there was like this overwhelming sense of love with all of these macho, masculine type A personalities. And what came out of it was they didn't focus on the words that they were feeling. They focused on the connecting words that indicated that they were trending towards hope. And from that point forward, the next hour and 15 minutes was one of the most positive experiences I've ever seen. So a little bit, I disagree that I think that they were flipped, but maybe I'm just dealing with people that have challenges.
Well, it's a great story. And I just worked with a group yesterday, And we did a similar exercise, and it got, it didn't get ugly, but it got tough. And at the end of the session, the leaders all said it was the best session we've ever had, because we didn't know that all of these disconnecting words were happening within our organization. We kind of had a sense of it, but if we're not asking these questions and not really taking the pulse of our employees on a regular basis, and they don't feel like they can have an opportunity to answer, then we just don't know that it doesn't exist, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So I like that story a lot, Rob. Thanks for sharing that. So these disconnecting words, similar to the connecting words, the larger the box, the more often it's been said. So we've got people who are feeling anxious, they're feeling uncertain, they're feeling stressed, they're feeling scared, they're feeling overwhelmed, they're feeling frustrated. So words we would expect. But this is a global look at how the organizations across the country who have filled this out are feeling right now. So not being a member of the Culture Think Tank, you can always log on to this website and see kind of this global look. And as time passes, we'll see how that dial changes. I'm the eternal optimist, Rob, and hope that those numbers start to switch to being a little bit better. But I agree with you in that if we don't address it, if we don't do some sort of intervention, then we're going to stay in this kind of 80-20 bad dynamic. So that's really what the overall looks like. So let's say you want to become a member of the Culture Think Tank. Go ahead, Rob. Did you have something to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. What you just said, I think, is so profound, because now you're measuring something. You're measuring that thing that has been, for CFOs forever, has been that intangible frustration for them. Well, if you want me to invest in culture, then you got to show me the ROI. And we have the precursors. We have those leading indicators here. And to be able to look at this and see how it trends over time, and to be able to say, wow, you know what, I feel like, one of the disconnecting words is distrust or lack of clarity or whatever it ends up coming. We now can start to push levers to change those things. And we actually have a clear path to creating the culture that we look for.
Great. I love that. I've been doing culture work for about 30 years, started at Southwest Airlines and then helped create JetBlue Airways. So we worked I've worked in a large culture trying to continue to shift it like Southwest Airlines. And then we created JetBlue from a piece of paper and an idea. And so we created a culture as we created the organization. So largely a lot of the work that I've done up to this point, the culture piece of it has been anecdotal. And so it's nice now to have a tool that allows us to measure culture. And we are looking at the behaviors that are happening within the organization. My definition of culture is that culture is a collection of the behaviors of the people within an organization. So it all boils down to how we behave. And these feeling words here, we can imagine that if my feeling is anxious, if my feeling is uncertainty, if my feeling is being stressed or scared, my behavior is going to reflect that. So the culture is influenced by these feeling words, and our ability to understand that then gives us a better understanding of what is driving the culture. Every culture has an organization. I mean, every organization has a culture, some by design and some by default. So what we want to do is make sure that we are moving our culture in the direction that we want to. And this diagnostic tool gives us the opportunity to say, I see now why these behaviors are what they are, because they're driven by these feelings. So this is the look again at our global summary. If you're a member of the Culture Think Tank, then you have a button here that says member survey. So for this particular client, we're going to see what their organization looks like, and then we'll be able to compare it to what the global summary looks like as well. So give this just a few seconds. So this dial right here is all of the submissions. So this client has 9 employees and 9 employees answered. So it's the same thing. These are the connecting words. And so we have 22% had connecting words globally, and then the other 7 had disconnecting words. So again, it doesn't mean anything bad about this organization's culture. What it means is that there are some things happening right now. There are some frustrations, and how valuable a tool is that for leaders to be able to say, I know something's wrong, but I just don't know what it is. And this gives us an opportunity to go in and say, now I understand what it is. So in this particular culture, as we look at it, these people are anxious, they're surprised, they're nervous, they're isolated, and they're frustrated. So the opportunity for a leader to say, wow, I did not know that my employees were feeling that is very powerful. Then it breaks it down further into, okay, so of these submissions, I want to know what my non-managers are thinking. So in this particular case, the non-managers are 33% connecting, the disconnecting words that are still there, but they're fewer with the managers, with the non-managers than with the managers. So it's interesting as we look at this to say, my non-managers, my employees, my line level people are feeling things like they're happy and they're good, but the managers believe that everyone is feeling anxious, that everyone is feeling surprised, that everyone is feeling nervous and isolated. So it's an interesting look to say that maybe our leaders didn't exactly know as much as we thought they did about how our employees are feeling. So that's an important piece for us as well. And then when we look at our member comparison, this shows all of the organizations, again, like that first global summary we looked at, as it compares to my organization. So this gives us an opportunity to say, we look about like the rest of the world does. I don't know whether that, this particular organization, whether they think that's good or bad, but I do know it does make leaders feel a little bit better to know it's not just me, I'm not alone. So if my employees are feeling these things like anxiety and fear, then at least we understand that, I'm not the only one. So what I can also do that's kind of a neat opportunity, if I go to these distracting or disconnecting words, and let's just say for whatever reason, I particularly don't want my employees to feel, we can choose one of these, but let's just say disconnected is a word that I don't want my employees to feel. If I want anything, I want to make sure they're feeling connected. So I can click on that one disconnecting word that kind of bothers me as an executive. And then I can come back over and find out, did we have anyone in our organization that was feeling that way? So I can actually pick apart the specific words and find out if that's something that is bothering my employees or if it's not. So that as a leader, so I see it didn't display anything. So I know that none of my employees are feeling that disconnection, which was my important word. So it gives us, we can dig that deep into the data to understand exactly what are my employees feeling. So that's the summary on this connection index. Again, the connection index is telling us these words based on the Pulse poll that we're sending out every other week, how they're feeling with respect to being connected. So from a culture point of view, that's important for us, but we're also breaking up the data differently, and we're looking at what we're calling this a performance index. And as we have studied culture, the people on this team in the Culture Think Tank have studied culture for many, many years. I don't want to date any of us here. But what we understand about culture is that there are several dimensions that influence a culture more strongly than others. And they've been identified and broken down into alignment, communication, focus, and trust. So those are these 4 dimensions that are influencing your culture, that if we can create behaviors around those dimensions, we can influence our culture. So as we look at the global data, again, we're looking at, so for instance, the things that trust with respect to culture here is at 30%, alignment is at 17%, the communication is 27%, and focus is 28%. So what that allows us to do is say, okay, what is driving this? So on the right-hand side, what we're understanding is what are the drivers that are driving, what do people need in order to feel more trust? So they're saying that they need support to feel more trust. Some said I don't need anything to feel more trust. Some said I need patience from my leadership. I need encouragement from my leadership. I need hope. So this gives us an opportunity to say, okay, if there's a 30% trust issue within my organization and my people are telling me they need more support or they need nothing or they need patience, that gives me as a leader an opportunity to say, okay, how are we providing that for our employees? And in terms of alignment, the thing that they need the most is clarity. Now, this is the global look, and leaders that I work with, and I'm sure Rob and Cynthia, you would agree that most leaders feel like they're communicating enough and they feel like they're pretty clear. But time and time again, the feedback that we get says, I need more communication. And what they're really saying, I believe, is I need more focused communication. I need more clear communication. I need to know exactly what you need me to do. So Rob or Cynthia, give me your feelings and thoughts on that in terms of clarity of communication.
I think
Cynthia,
we talked about that before.
Go ahead, Cynthia.
I think we talked about that in a previous think tank. And we as panelists that have done this work we agreed. It's not so much that we need more communication as much as we need better, more effective, more precise, more specific communication, which will beget clarity, which will beget alignment. So it's, again, a leader saying, but we do communicate. We communicate all the time. I would suggest that this can help us go a little deeper into that around, yes, but what type of communication?
Okay,
Absolutely.
great.
Yeah, there's a great book by Chip and Dan Heath called Switch. And, a lot of times you hear from leaders, my people they just don't get it, or my people are just, I can't get them to get on board. And when they went and they looked at the research, what we mistake oftentimes as resistance to either putting the effort in that we're looking for, or to get on board with a change initiative or a new initiative, and we mistake it for, just a bad attitude. 30% of the time, it really is simply a lack of clarity around what it is that you're asking us to do.
Okay.
So it's not more words, just more clarity around the words.
Right. And our employees are hungry for it, and we don't often give them a vehicle by which to ask us further questions or give us the feedback. We believe we've said it as leaders, and so we think that's enough. So this also gives employees an opportunity to be heard. And if they're asking us clearly, and this is the global research that is showing that clarity is something that people are saying they need. In terms of communication, it's similar. They want more, and they want support, and they want encouragement. So if I were a leader and my organization was telling me that they need more communication and that they need more support, I would want to talk to my employees and pull them aside and say, what specifically do you need from me? How often would you like me to communicate with me? In what format is most effective for you? And understand that this communication is two-way. So how can I give you a bigger voice or a better voice? How can you be heard? A lot of organizations have opportunities for employees to sit down and talk to one another, or to sit down and talk one-on-one with leadership. And I think those are the kind of tools and opportunities that create that clarity and create support and make employees feel like they've been heard. It isn't necessarily that we have to do what the employees want us to do. We've just got to hear them. And we may or may not be able to do what they want us to do, but they just need to know why or why not. So I think if we can provide that, that's very helpful. In terms of focus globally, the issues, the drivers of need, again, are clarity and results. So those are the things that are most often said by employees in the survey, is that the thing that they need in order to get better focus is clarity and results. And that certainly makes sense. And sometimes it's, some jobs have more feedback brought naturally in the job. If you're in sales, that job automatically gives you a lot of feedback because you know how you've done, because that's you're a binary metric. But not all jobs are that obvious in terms of feedback for how I'm doing. And results are, we want to know how we're doing. We need some sort of a marker, a measurement to know if I'm doing my job well or if I'm not. And sometimes it's simply communication that can bridge that gap. So that is what it's telling me here is I need to be more clear, and we need to show results of how people are doing so they feel like they've made a difference. So,
or clarity around the expected result.
Sure, absolutely. And in this particular world that we're living in right now, the way that we used to measure results and the expectation of results have shifted. So if employees are at home, and as we all are, And there's a sense of, did I get anything accomplished today? How much did I get accomplished? Did I get enough accomplished? And it can really start to beat down the psyche of our workforce if they don't have an opportunity to see we are going to get through this, and B, you are making progress, and here's how I can help you, and here's how you can help yourself. So any other thoughts on that?
Well, interesting. This ties back to a program that I did yesterday, and with 150 participants, with their Army generals, Air Force generals, Navy admirals, CEOs, fire chiefs, leaders of all different persuasions from across the country. And one of the things that they talked about was productivity and performance in this new environment. And it was one of the questions that was posed was around how do I track performance and make sure that people are actually doing their work now that they're at home. And apparently there's some new software that is all the rage with, I think, too many companies, where they can track work computers and they can check every 5 minutes from 8 to 5, is the person sitting there in front of their computer? And what are they actually doing? And they're looking at it as a productivity tool. And I will share that it was virtually unanimous amongst these senior leaders that we had on this Zoom meeting yesterday that there's probably no quicker tool to break down trust than to micromanage like that. So I think that we can use these drivers as a much more effective tool to promote trust, promote empathy, and promote performance.
Well, it's a great example. The clock and the calendar have just kind of been thrown out the window, and rightfully so right now. Again, as we're competing for resources, I have a client who is in Florida and with his wife and 2 kids, and the Wi-Fi, they always thought they had great Wi-Fi until all 4 of them are working at the same time during the day. And so the dad, who's the primary breadwinner, just said, I'm going to have to do my work late at night because I've got my kids are trying to turn in their work and it's getting hung up in the Wi-Fi because I'm on, my wife's on, they're on. So those things, the calendar and the clock, we can't look at them the same way we used to. So if someone wants their employee to be sitting in front of a computer during traditional work hours, I think they might need to rethink that. So
well, I think, of course, leaders are concerned about productivity, right? But that word is almost a non sequitur. That word probably shouldn't be used at this point, because what we're trying to do is, as the graphs show, is we're trying to connect with people. We're trying to find out, how did their day go yesterday? How did their day go today? How did their week go? And to get into some specific questions around, what did it feel like? What did it look like? How can I help you? It's not about, hey, you were on, email for 40% of your day. It's not about that. And those leaders, that Rob referenced, are 100% correct. If you want to kill a culture in this particular environment, under this particular set of situations, just start using that software.
Well, and think about it this way: if you have access to this dashboard, imagine what a powerful tool this is to pull your entire leadership team or your entire team together and say, hey, this is where we were over the last 2 weeks. Let's talk about this collectively. Let's talk about what the drivers were. Let's talk about what the opportunities are for us to increase trust, to further clarify on communication and create greater alignment, and have everybody engage together in figuring out how to tinker through this to achieve performance rather than productivity.
I like that. And to be able to point to this tool and say, I know we think we're being clear as a leadership team, but our organization is clearly telling us that we're not clear enough. So, and it's not my opinion, it's the data is showing us that this is what we need to do. And to your point, Rob, we're asking these questions. So we're each time we send a pulse poll out, which again, we're doing twice monthly, we're asking some of the same questions. So we get a trend line, a trend analysis of how did I do last month versus how am I doing this month? So if we set our focus on clarity for the month, then we'll hopefully be able to watch those numbers shift and see that we are indeed listening to our employees. They can understand that we heard them. We don't want to ask our employees something and then not answer to it. But this member survey here, as we move over from the global survey to the member survey, again, this is one particular client's review. So again, as we compared the dimensions that influence culture, so overall submissions looks fairly similar to the global one that we saw. You can see that trust is 25%, and focus here is 33%. It's a little bit higher than the global. Communication is 25%, and alignment is 16%. But again, then we break that down by non-managers, managers, and senior leaders, and it tells a completely different story. So if you look at our non-managers, look fairly similar. Let's see what they feel like they need. So in terms of the non-managers feel like they need clarity. So that's what our employees, our line level employees are telling us. In terms of communication, they want to be communicated to and they want support, which doesn't surprise me in this environment. In terms of focus, they want results and clarity. And that's, again, how am I successful in this work? And it's interesting. So for this particular, for trust, they're saying, I don't need anything for trust. We're doing fine. Or does nothing mean you've done enough, just kind of leave me alone? So nothing is their answer that they put in. So it's interesting. I would assume with the balance that they have, that nothing does indeed mean we're good with respect to trust. But I would want to go ask the question, are we doing well? What else can we do? But if you look at our managers, in terms of alignment, they're saying, again, they need clarity. And in terms of focus, they're saying they need results and clarity. So the organization is speaking very clearly and succinctly about what it does need from us and how we can influence that. And then from a senior leadership point of view, this is, again, very interesting. Trust, that senior leadership is saying that that nothing is needed. Communication, they're saying they need communication and support, and again, results and clarity. So this gives us an opportunity then to compare what does our organization look like as compared with, let me go back to this one. What does our organization look like as it compares to the global? And again, we're pretty similar. So that helps me to understand that the things that I'm doing are similar to the things that other organizations are doing. But this is the part that I think is really interesting. And that is, I'm going to go back to our connection index. So as we start doing these member comparisons, how we're doing versus how other organizations are doing. And again, this is the connectivity piece. This is how connected do we feel to the organization. So non-managers, it's about the same. Managers, this is interesting that with this particular organization, there was a half and half in terms of connecting and non-connecting words. In this organization, managers, it was one person, but all disconnecting words. And senior leaders, every time that we've done this Pulse poll, we have found that senior leaders believe that their organization feels disconnected, even though their organization does not feel as disconnected as they believe they do. So this leadership bias is our senior leadership thinks we're doing worse than we actually think we're doing. So Cynthia and Rob, I'd be interested to get your take on, as senior leadership, if every time we are saying that we believe our staff is completely disconnected when indeed they aren't, what's the opportunity for us there? What do you guys think?
I would guess more specific communication.
Okay. Rob, can you add to that?
Yeah, I've talked to a couple of different organizations here over the last couple of weeks, and that there is a trend there where there's a perception of senior leadership that their people are more concerned, they are more frustrated, more uncertain. than the senior leadership actually, well, than the actual members that really are. And I wonder if there's just a disconnect around what level of resilience we assume people around us or beneath us have relative to what they actually have.
Yeah, because the question that we ask says, and you can look at a detailed breakdown. So as a member of the Culture Think Tank, one of the things that we'll be doing is we're going to be asking our members, you see the questions we're asking every week. Are there any questions that we haven't asked that you would like to see? But it does allow you to go in and see a detailed breakdown, or what are the questions that are being asked that are influencing the connectivity and the performance index, just so you know that you can go back and access that. But the questions of the employees are, what do you need right now? And they answer in their own one word. And then the question of the leadership is, what do you believe your team is feeling right now? So what are you feeling versus what do you believe your team is feeling? And that disconnect, to the point, I think communication does help. And communication involves listening too. And I think that maybe we haven't done as good a job there of being able to ask our employees, how are you doing? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? Give me some ideas as to what I can do to better serve you, better assist you. And we're making assumptions that aren't there. And I think there's a danger in my assuming you're doing worse than you are doing, because I don't think that, and Cynthia, I'm going to get into your wheelhouse here. I would imagine that my ability to be very productive is hampered somewhat by your belief that I'm not doing as well as I am. What do you think about that?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Most individuals want to be heard. It doesn't mean that you necessarily have to agree with them, but they want to be heard. If the employee is not feeling that you're listening, that you're hearing what they're saying, that you may not even be asking the questions to find out how they're feeling, then it fosters all of the disconnect that we may be seeing right now on some of these graphs. But it's all about, and I'm really glad that you brought that up, Delise, because yes, I said more specific questions are important, but the other part of that, the other 50% of that is, are you listening? And if you're listening, you can find a way to get to having a dialogue, an open, honest dialogue, a transparent dialogue about what is it that's going on with you. Because right now, I'm really not that concerned about your productivity. I just want to hear what's going on with you. I want to listen. So.
Sure. And it's,
but go ahead.
No, it's shifting, because what we're hearing from employees, what we were hearing from employees, 4 to 6 weeks ago, it's a dynamic experience, because they were feeling very scared, very isolated, and those are shifting now. They're getting a little bored, a little frustrated, kind of ready for this thing to end, and less about fear and more about frustration. So our ability as leaders to flex to that and pivot to that and offer different opportunities for employees. I was on another virtual happy hour that I was on yesterday, and it was a client, and they were having fun, but they're so done being on a Zoom call or a GoToMeeting call that it seemed forced, to be quite frank. And so I think that there's the things that just because it worked once doesn't mean that we have to do it every week. I would continue to ask your employees, is this still working? Are you enjoying this? I know it worked for the first several weeks, but now is it becoming cumbersome? And being willing to be flexible and nimble and dynamic in how we're offering opportunities for our employees to stay connected.
Yeah.
Well, and this is a little bit of a left turn, but I'm good for that. When you think about the disconnect between what senior leadership thinks that the non-leadership body feels, there's that assumption bias that exists, and what I think about my workforce, and when we talk about what they're feeling, what they're capable of, when I have those biases in my head, I'm going to talk to people differently. I'm going to treat them differently. I'm going to have different experiences of them. You know, bless his heart, Will Lindstrom tries so hard to do the right thing, but you know, he just is not a technical wizard, which is exactly the opposite of the reality, because he is a genius. But if I think that he has limitations, I'm going to speak to him differently. I'm going to treat him differently. I'm going to expect less of him. And having this tool to challenge those assumptions and give us new data points gives us a whole new world from which to lead and to manage our organizations.
Sure. And we talk a lot about hope. And I think it's important for us to understand that, because if I have that assumption and that bias that it's really bad for my employees, it robs them of the opportunity to have hope. And I think that as I mentioned earlier in the hour, as we transition back into what will be the old new normal, I'm not sure what we're going to call that then, but a more traditional workforce, I think that people are going to look at their bosses at times and say, I want to work from home today, and I have proven I can. So how do we handle that? And how are we going to stay connected? And are we going to loosen up being in HR for 30 years? I can't tell you how many struggles I've had with executives from employees who, for one reason or another, needed to or wanted to work from home. And the resistance to that has always been phenomenally strong. Like I cannot have my people dispersed. It's one of the biggest structural HR issues that I've fought with executives around, just asking the question why. And so now that we've all demonstrated that we can, in fact, do a lot of our work from home, I'll be interested to see what that transition looks like. And this tool to be able to keep our finger on the pulse of how our employees are feeling about it, because then it becomes, there's an egalitarianism to where we are right now. Everyone is at home if they can be, and it's equal. But as we transition back, will there be choices? If you want to work from home, your job's going to look like this. If you want to work in our office, it's going to look like that. It'll be interesting to see what that looks like. What do you guys think?
In my mind, I've heard all of that same pushback about, you can't let your people work from home because they're going to be in their pajamas and they're going to be watching, the Maury show all day or something.
Right.
In just my opinion, that's a control thing. And I will go out and say on a limb and say it's a way for less capable leaders to hide their shortcomings, because working remotely requires a different level and a different quality of leadership than being able to keep my eye on everybody in the bullpen and be able to control them.
Sure.
So
when I was at Southwest Airlines, and they're touted as the leadership gurus, and I had some good leaders at Southwest, and I had some not so good leaders there too, just as the numbers would have it. And I had one leader, I was in the HR department, and she wanted everyone to be, she didn't care what time you got there, she cared what time you left. So I am an early riser, and I was the first person that would darken the doorway at the corporate headquarters at Southwest Airlines in the morning, because I like to do my work early. And I liked to leave around 5 or 5:30 because I had a lot of other commitments that I would do outside of work. And she sat me down and said, you're going to have a perception problem as a leader in this organization. And I said, why is that? And she said, you can't leave at 5 or 5:30. But I get here at 5 or 5:30. She's like, but there's no one around to see that. So there's a control issue to that never really sat right with me. And I think some of those things we're going to have to unshackle ourselves from and make it more about how am I performing, how am I doing, not necessarily what does it look like.
Absolutely. I heard somewhere in the last 2 weeks where it was said that this crisis has put a spotlight on how unprepared corporate America has taken care of their leaders, particularly their mid-level leaders, and how we have just done a disservice to them in not giving them the tools and the development that they need to actually inspire, empower, and challenge their employees.
I think it's completely true. And I do work as you guys do too with mid-level managers all the time. And I hear that. I don't have the tools I usually have, the training I usually have. It's the trust. I don't have the trust of my senior leadership to be able to go carry out what I believe I can carry out. And I think that, there's the saying that your organization is going to move at the speed of trust. So if you want to move your organization forward, work on trust. And I know I'm preaching to the choir with the people on this call, because I think you guys know that trust is so much the name of the game in terms of building that strong culture. Will, do we have any questions that have come up that we can address?
We have two questions. One of them relates to basically how do you take what you learn and provide feedback to your organization in a summary note?
Okay. The thing what we like about this tool is, again, if I take you to two different places, I want to look at connectivity and I want to look at the performance, the dimensions of performance around culture. But if I look at this, member summary. If I look at this member summary, and I'm going to look at this and say, okay, I'm most concerned about my leadership, my managers, and my senior leaders are feeling that the organization is not connected, when indeed the organization is connected. So what I would want to do is say, if my employees are indeed feeling some of these things, like anxiety, like surprise, like nervousness, like isolation, what I'd like to do is I'd like to verify that information by talking to them. Are you feeling this way still? Again, these are real-time dashboards, and that do they update right now? Are they going to be updating daily, Will, or weekly?
They update basically every 2 to 4 hours.
Okay, so we are very, very real time. So every 2 weeks, we're going to be asking, if I'm a member of the Culture Think Tank, I'm going to be asking these questions. So I'm going to watch and say, okay, so you guys told me that you were feeling anxious. So we had an opportunity for us to sit down and talk about what your fears are, what's causing your anxiety, what can we do organizationally to help stymie some of that. Some of it I'm not going to be able to get rid of. I mean, I think everybody's a little bit anxious at this point. What's going to happen? A little bit anxious about Georgia right now, to be honest. So what is it going to look like? We don't know. But at least if I have the opportunity to share my concerns and allay them a little bit, if just by expressing them and by sharing them with others who are of like mind, then it allows me to feel a little bit better about it. I don't think, managers don't need to have all the answers, certainly, but I do think that they need to be a sounding board. I think that they need to be an ear. So I would create opportunities from this dashboard to either create different behaviors within the organization, have different conversations within the organization. And I'm a strong believer in tying that conversation back to the survey. So when I sat down with my employees, I would show them the dashboard and say, what I'm hearing from you guys is anxiety, is surprise, is nervousness. Let's talk about that, because that's the way that you guys answered it in the survey. I want to keep tying it back to this, because it shows them we ask you to fill this out and we are listening and we're doing something about it. Rob, Cynthia, would y'all add anything to that?
I would, yeah. I look at it as just an incredible tool, because these are the feelings of the workforce. We can't invalidate them. We can't say that they're wrong, because there are feelings, or the employees' feelings. And this is just a fabulous tool to be able to sit down with your managers or your leadership team and say, okay, this is what people are feeling, and then pull those leaders into the conversation. What do you think? What do you need in order to be able to change those perceptions? When we ask questions around, did my leader do something that built trust with me in the last 2 weeks? And was that act of trust, was it based on their demonstrated competence, or was it based on their demonstrated caring of me, or was it based on, they acted in a way that was the signified character? I can start to look at what are the specific behaviors that my leaders are demonstrating that are inspiring specific feelings, And by having the leaders in the conversation, they can start taking more ownership of their own behaviors. Going to what you said at the top of the hour, Delise, culture's defined by the behaviors, and people can start tweaking their own behaviors to impact or to influence the feelings that the people are having. So now we have something that's quantifiable and measurable over time to see if what we're doing is working.
Yeah, I like the comment about validating these feelings. They are not right or wrong, they just are. So if my employees are telling me they're feeling this way, there is no reason for me to want to change those feelings. I just want to understand them and see what we might be able to do, especially with these disconnecting feelings. What can we do to minimize those so that even though Rob is a firm believer that this is 80 is going to stay 80, I'm still hopeful. I'm going to bring that down just a little bit if we can.
Oh, I'm not saying that I think that they're going to stay there. I think that as organizations are able to like do good work around their culture and around their leadership development, it will change. I think that there are far too many companies that even before the pandemic were stuck in that 80%, but I firmly believe that we can change that going forward.
Good. What's our other question, Will?
Well, I want to.
Oh, go ahead, Cynthia.
Well, I wanted to go back to a comment Rob made. He said, this situation is requiring a different level of leadership and a different quality in leadership. And if nothing else, it seems to me that the shift doesn't have to be huge. It just has to be someone who wants to lead with a healthy sense of curiosity about not only is what is going on with their numbers and their productivity, but what is going on with that person. Putting aside their beliefs, their attitude around how we oversee a remote workforce, just put it on hold and gain a stronger sense of curiosity around it. And then this tool is used as a way to measure that. It's Delise who said something to me that I just love. She says, the kind of work that we do is no longer anecdotal. This provides an empirical way to really find out what's going on in real time.
Good.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I love that curiosity and leadership that you talk about, Cynthia, because I have some clients who they don't feel that natural being an empathetic leader, even though they're very kind people, but they're very happy to be a curious leader. And I think if we are curious about why are you feeling that way, what's causing this, what can I do to help, I think if you spark that curiosity as a leader, it really will provide a lot of answers to how do we solve some of these disconnected behaviors and feelings.
I think that issue of curiosity is almost a requirement to be a really strong, transparent leader in this day and time, and even more so now. Just as curiosity is a good thing to be if you're an entrepreneur because it keeps you going, keeps you solving problems. But as a leader in this environment, I think that's something to cultivate. Yet, so many of us and so many leaders are taught to it's top down, give orders, give requests, look at numbers, and so now we just have to put on a different hat.
Good, and it'd be interesting. We need to do some work on what are the components of a curious leader. So I'd like us to think about that. What do I demonstrate behaviorally that would suggest I'm a curious leader?
Can I piggyback the one sentence? I'm going to give you 4 words and 2 bonus words, and I'm borrowing this from teammate Dr. Kevin Basic, who shared this yesterday. He said, this is the most powerful question that you can ask your people. What do you think? What do you need? And what do you wonder? And that, if you can get that base level of curiosity, you can build on it. What do you think? What do you need? What do you wonder?
Good. I love that. Speaking of curious, Will, do we have another question?
The last question comes to, can I see the detailed results or the detailed feedback of what people are submitting?
Like the detailed breakdown?
I think what they're alluding to is, can they see the actual words? Because we take all the words and we use a little algorithm to determine to turn them into like anxious or to turn them into one of the key need words. But I think what they're asking for is can they see the detailed results, which obviously for protection reasons, you always have to be a little bit careful of, but we do have that feature right there. If you click on it, you can toggle the feedback in the upper right. So we did add that. Nope, see the little feedback, the blue box? Yeah, click that.
This one?
No, where it says click to toggle. We've had this question a number of times. We've always been a little hesitant to add it, but we finally did. So you see where it says click to toggle for feedback? You can actually click and see what people
Actual
submitted,
words.
but those are always kind of something that, Rob can talk about how to do, because you use feedback words all the time, but kind of how to balance it. So we did add it. We were a little hesitant to, but they're powerful, but they can also be a dual-edged sword.
Yeah, well, we tell people when they do an assessment, especially in smaller organizations, there's a tendency to want to look at those and say, who said that? I got to figure out who that is. And I would strongly discourage that, just knowing that the information is out there, that sentiment is out there, and not trying to isolate someone to make them cop to whether or not they wrote an answer. We're asking them, they're telling us, so we don't need to be investigators and figure out who said it, because one way to squelch honesty is to start digging around and trying to find out who said what. So encourage us not to do that, if at all possible. But it is good to see it, as long as we use that information appropriately. So I just want to encourage you all to, if you're not a member of the Culture Think Tank, it's free to join the Culture Think Tank right now during this crisis. And this is a great time to get as many of get your organization on board, get as many organizations that you work with to come to the Culture Think Tank, to be able to see what's happening so that we get more information, more data, and then we can do that with your own organization as well. And one of us will walk you through, either individually or with a group, with your results to better understand what can you do with it, how can you use this information to enhance your culture, your communication, your clarity, your focus, your alignment, and really make you a stronger organization during this difficult time. So thank you guys. Thank you for all of our panelists for being here. Will, do you want to close us up with anything?
Well, I was going to let Rob close this up because next week he's got a special guest.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Next week, we're inviting Ken Mathias, the president and founder of the Complete Companies in Lake Orion, Michigan. And they are a fascinating organization. They're in the automotive industry. Well, they started out in the automotive industry with fluid systems around automated paint systems for a whole bunch of different high-end car companies. But then they branched into other fluid capabilities around brewing and filtration and things of that nature. But they've got about 300 employees in north of Detroit. And the things that they have done with their culture, particularly over the last month and even before that, have really just been the living embodiment of everything that Cynthia and Delise and I have been talking about for the last few weeks. And as they go out and they do their pulse survey for their employees in the coming week, I'm really looking forward to seeing what we can learn from their data going forward.
Great. I look forward to it.
Great.
Well, thank you guys.
All right.
Thanks for letting us walk through the dashboards with you, and let us know if you're interested in joining the Culture Think Tank, or go ahead and sign up and we'll go over your information with you.
Thanks, everybody. See you next week.
Stay safe,
Bye.
y'all.